Hey everyone, welcome to 5v5 Live. I'm Matt Hempstead. That's Eric Kummel once again, and it was a pretty fantastic week in the LCS. Coming back from Rift Rivals, all these teams get back to the normal schedule. It was week 6 in the LCS, and we'll start in Europe, where the big three, in my opinion, Unicorns of Love, Fnatic, and G2, kind of all got back on track after what was a disaster of a tournament.
Disaster?
Well, not overseas because it was in their own
At home.
place. At home, that's right. But they all looked pretty solid, except for maybe the exception of the Unicorns of Love, who kind of struggled against Misfits. But other than that, G2 and Fnatic looked pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, UOL, even when they're winning, a lot of the time, it's not that clean, calculated way that they go about things. They just run in and kind of beat their head against the wall, and most of the time, it works for them. But yeah, G2, a team I think we both kind of expected, even though they've had some poor performances lately, to get back on track. Perkz and Sven were both great, and I think individually they've both been pretty consistent, even though the team has struggled. But more so, the team looked like they had their communication back. Trick had some great synergy with Spect and Perkz. They seem to be back on the same page, and really they were just making plays together as a team.
Yeah, the thing with Trick is 1 week he can be on the same page with everybody, and then the next week it'll be a disaster again. But yeah. G2 definitely impressed me. Pretty straightforward victories against Vitality, and Perkz looked great, but we'll get into that more. For Fnatic, it was Reckless not playing Tristana, not playing Kennen. He pulled out Sivir, of course, Sivir, and then Varus, who's also kind of falling out of the meta. So he changed his champion pool, but still not meta picks anymore, because I would say that Varus is kind of falling out of that.
Yeah, he's a little late to the Varus hype train,
yeah,
but I did kind of like the Sivir pick. Definitely a lot more than something like Corki.
It screams Fnatic, the Sivir.
Yeah, I think Sivir, even when she's not super popular, you can almost still get away with her just because her ult is so broken and just makes moving around and team fighting so much easier. So I'm okay with the Sivir pick. I don't know about Varus going forward.
Yeah, the Sivir is... I remember the days of Sivir Karma being the priority, and it was pretty boring, I'm not going to lie to you. But yeah, even just late game scaling with Sivir is pretty good with that bouncing blade mechanic. Getting crits off of that is pretty busted if you make it there. Of course, Fnatic ended both games pretty quick, so that wasn't really a thing. But for the Unicorns, yeah, you mentioned it. I think they got kind of lucky going up against the Misfits, who have lately found this issue closing out games.
They like to throw.
They do like to throw, which is good for the Unicorns, who kind of lack that early game prowess. And even at Rift Rivals, they were really relying on just picking for scaling comps and waiting it out and then taking advantage later on, I guess, when their team fighting takes over. But early on, they definitely get these disadvantages. Luckily, it was the Misfits, and Misfits threw away the games.
Yeah, it kind of seemed those games, the game didn't actually start till like 15 minutes.
Right.
They were just kind of, both teams just kind of running around doing whatever, and then they're so focused on team fighting and just cashing in on the mistakes of opponents, and Misfits likes to make a lot in the mid game, so
He does.
worked out for them.
Absolutely. Vizitrati looked great, though, I will say, on his Fiora especially.
Yeah, he's still, there were a couple of times his whole team recalled, and he was just like, I'll take this inhib turret. And the whole team was there, the opposing team. So he gets a little too far ahead of himself, trying to go for that 1v4 outplay, but sometimes he gets it. So you got to respect that.
You got to respect it, but he was outperformed by Perkz this week, who 16-1-15 was his KDA across the 2 games against Vitality. It's a 31 KDA, pretty good.
Some fine math you just
Oh,
did.
thank you. His Orianna in game 1 was solid, got some good ultis off, but overall nothing special. And then game 2, his LeBlanc absolutely took over, and he broke the EU LCS record for most solo kills in a game.
Yeah, I think Perkz and Caps, maybe they were just kind of training in a hyperbolic chamber against Rift Rivals, where they're constantly getting camped and 4 guys constantly coming mid. So now they come back to EU, and maybe it's just a jungler, or they're just 1v1ing them, and they're like, wow, this is way easier. So I think that, in that sense, Rift Rivals really helped them out, because they were both great this week.
They were both great, and you're right. In Europe, junglers don't really prioritize camping the mid lane as much as they do or in North America or at Rift Rivals, where NA just devoured EU by ganking mid over and over. Rip Exile. That was devastating. But I mean, yeah, so Perkz was able to do his thing, and he was roaming all over the map, going top lane to get kills, bot lane to get kills, and just 1v3ing underneath the enemy turret to pick up a double kill too. He was all over the map and really carried G2 in that game.
Yeah, no, I mean, across the board, they look pretty good. But yeah, Perkz has got to be the MVP for them so far, based off 1 week back from Rift Rivals.
Based off of 2 games
That's right.
against Vitality, yes.
One of the best teams in the league, right?
Yeah.
No.
Not really. They're 3 and 5, and below that is the 2 and 6 monkeys. Yes, 2 and 6. They've won.
Wow, 2 wins.
They've won 2 matches now. They just beat Team Rocket, which I would say is an upset. Maybe not. Maybe it's a coin flip. But they've definitely turned things around since they picked up Kikis and Amazing.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely better than they were at the start.
That's not saying much.
It's a pretty low bar to go from.
The bar
but
is low.
I think maybe Rocket people just thought they were better than they are. They had that crazy come from behind series win against Fnatic, and people were like, "Wow, maybe this team's kind of serious." But since then, they haven't really shown much. And yeah, losing that series, I don't know if this is as much the Monkeys are an okay team, or maybe Rocket's just as bad or worse than them. I think the bottom 3 or 4 in Europe, there's a huge gap between everyone else.
There's definitely a big fall off. I mean, the only reason Rocket has any hype is because of that Fnatic win.
Yeah.
And that's Fnatic's only loss of the season. So being to Rocket is
Rocket's the best team.
That's right. Exactly. Log it down. But for the Monkeys, I mean, Kikis and Expect has chemistry to a certain degree, but there was still a bunch of misplays when they tried to dive Faxi under the turret and died, which is not optimal. But, I mean, CosQ not playing Katarina is a nice change of pace for me.
He's saving that for next week.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll lose then. But they're going with meta picks like Cassiopeia when the time's right, and Corki, which is probably the most busted mid laner right now, aside from Syndra, who I know you have.
very busted.
Yes, she is. It's a very skilled champion.
Yes.
But also Yuki on the Callista, and just overall they're decent. I would say that the laners now are solid across the board for the most part. And from there, they can, have a decent standard in terms of gameplay.
Yeah, their bot lane's been as consistent as you could be on that team. I think they've been fine. Yeah, now with Kikis and Amazing, their presence, that's helping them out. They're still not great.
No, but Game 2 was a little bit impressive to me because they didn't really rely on kills. They really did macro their way around the map. I believe the end score was like 8 kills to 3. So
that's just pretty rare for...
Yeah. Especially with teams that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's usually more of a bloodbath.
So I'll be impressed if they can do that again, or if that was a one-off experience.
Right. So you watch Europe week in, week out, and the thing for me is there's a pretty defined tier list when you look at these teams. I kind of split up into 4 tiers. You have the first one with G2, H2K, UOL, and Fnatic. H2K is kind of on the barrier there. And then the tier 2 is Splice and Misfits. Tier 3, Rocket, Vitality, and the Monkeys, and then have a separate tier 4, maybe tier 5 for NIP. Maybe they skip a tier and go even
tier
lower.
4 is Liquid, and tier 5 is NIP. But I mean, even G2, people probably wouldn't have even put in that top tier lately. But I think you have to, just because of their history, and even though they've been struggling, I think even teams in Europe are kind of like, we still don't want to play them in a best of series. But yeah, it's definitely defined into that. I think those top 4 teams are way ahead, maybe just ahead, significantly ahead of even guys like Splice and Misfits, because they've both kind of shown they don't really know how to execute or close games out when they have that lead. Those top 4 teams, even when they're at a deficit, they can come back, and when they have that lead early on, they usually close it out pretty quickly. Yeah,
the only issue for me with having these teams and like the lack of parity is it can get pretty boring some weeks when you see Fnatic against NIP. Wow, let's tune into that.
Well, I think anyone versus NIP is...
That's a good point.
Except for when the Monkeys played them and they both had no wins.
That was pretty hype.
That's hype.
That is hype. So let's look forward to next week here. There's actually a couple good matchups, despite there being all that parity. You've got H2K versus G2 and Fnatic versus the Unicorns. Start with H2K and G2.
Yeah, see, that's when you have that parity.
It's
when
great.
The top teams play, then it's great.
It
just doesn't happen that often.
No.
Which one do you start with?
We'll go with Fnatic.
Fnatic. Yeah, that's interesting. Obviously, guys, both coming off Rift Rivals. I've got to favor Fnatic.
Yeah.
I'm a fanatic for Fnatic.
There you go. Oh,
Still
Lord. Okay. Keep going.
Just because Exile, mainly. I think top and bottom, they're pretty even, but if Broxa just caps mid, which again, he learned from Rift Rivals, that works pretty well. You put him on an assassin or a carry in there, and then you just camp mid. Exile has shown that he doesn't seem to learn from getting ganked. He just continually plays aggressive, and that's how he quickly is going 0-3 in lane. I think if you have caps on a guy, on a girl, like LeBlanc in the mid lane. He's just going to completely snowball the game out of control, and I think that's a game plan for Fnatic.
Fair enough. I just love the series every time these two teams get together, because you've seen in the past, in 2015 particularly, there was that interesting
spicy
game.
one, yeah.
Very spicy game when Fnatic had a chance to end the game twice, couple hits away from ending it, and then Unicorns ran down the other way, ended the game. Outstanding.
You got to love the Nexus battle trade where they
Yes.
each have 3 or 4 hits left on both sides. Those get spicy.
It's incredibly entertaining, even though sometimes it's a bit of a clown fiesta.
I would say anytime a game is in that scenario, it is a clown fiesta
Fair
because
enough.
they're just running China in the game.
All right, before we move on to North America, G2, H2K. That one's pretty interesting because G2 is really just starting to turn things down. H2K, sure, they're 6-2, but some of the games have been pretty is my adjective of the day.
I mean, they completely crushed Rocket, but that's not all that impressive.
It's not.
It feels like this is a pretty big statement series for both of these teams. G2 to show that they're getting back into regular form, and H2K to prove that what they seem to always have to prove, that they're actual contenders, but they always seem to come up short in those games, whether it's in playoffs or a key regular season series like this one. So I've got to give the edge to G2 just based on history. They usually seem to come through on these big games, at least domestically.
Yeah, I mean, Perkz also said that they're not going to lose a set for the rest of the season.
Oh, well.
So
Perkz said it.
That's right. Everything he says is pretty accurate. Except for that meme that goes around where his Rise is bad, his Azir is worse.
Well, too bad no one plays those champs anymore.
Yeah.
We got to come up with a new rhyme for Perkz.
We do.
So send one in. Send one in.
Yeah, Perkz, we need some bad performances.
Yeah.
So we can change up those champions a little bit. Speaking of Clown Fiestas, we're going to take a quick break and watch the top 5 Clown Fiestas in League of Legends history. It should be pretty good, but while you're watching that, make sure you send us your questions, and we'll answer them shortly after the break. See you in a bit.
What is a Clown Fiesta? Well, it's basically a bizarre series of events in which nobody knows what is going on. And it's often applied to League of Legends games in instances of sloppy play and ridiculous moments. Here are the 5 biggest Clown Fiestas in League of Legends history. Number 5. Way back in 2012, Curse and Dignitas met in the grand finals of MLG Raleigh, but rather than play it out in normal fashion, the two teams agreed to make it an ARAM. Part of the agreement was that they would allegedly also split the first place prize money. Although the game was wildly entertaining, as the teams combined for 151 kills, Curse and Dig were later disqualified as the collusion violated MLG's rules. Number 4. When the results of a competitive game mean nothing, occasionally teams will make troll picks and take the game rather lightly. But Alliance and Millennium took it to another level in the 2014 summer split. With Ashe jungle, Rammus top, and a Leona Jarvan bot lane, the two teams exchanged jabs for almost 40 minutes. Massive teamfights escalated the kill count as the end result was 92 kills, and a meaningless win for Alliance. Number 3. Mechanically, this game was perfectly fine, but the ending was nothing short of insane. A bloodbath early. The craziness started around 20 minutes when UOL took down Baron. They cracked Fnatic's inhib line but couldn't end the game. Shortly later, Fnatic took a Baron of their own and attempted to finish the game.
Hylissang is down, the Nexus turret is down, they're onto their Nexus, Fnatic look like they're stunned at 33 minutes, Fnatic are taking down the Unicorns of Love.
No!
A few more hits. What?
Fnatic spent the next 5 minutes trying to backdoor their opponent's Nexus, but eventually, it'd be the Unicorns who would get the win.
Power of Evil's got him, can Power of Evil turn it around?
Can he get
Backboard
Phoenix?
from Steelback, he can't
Phoenix
find
can
Phoenix. Steelback is looking for Power of Evil, Unicorns have done it! Unicorns have beaten Fnatic!
Number 2. This could possibly be the worst played game of Professional League ever, and it started from the very beginning.
They have the double TP. They can open up the lane. Really? Oh my word. Take it to Kiwi!
Quick, take the turret so you get the gold back, right? Did they shut down the turret?
You'd think Dig losing 2 members to a turret would be the worst of it. The Renegades answered back immediately by handing 2 kills over to the Rift Herald. 45 minutes later, the game ended in perfect fashion for a game of this caliber.
We may get the kill here from Seraph. The fight on Dignitas, and it is going to be huge. Damage is down to one hit. Seraph with the fire. We called the top laner would make plays in his substitution, and Seraph comes forth to do so. Renegades takes down Team Dignitas.
Number 1. In the final week of the LPL Spring 2015 season, Invictus and LGD faced off with a lot on the line. However, both teams wanted to lose as the winner would have to face the hottest team, EDG, in the playoffs. Of course, obviously throwing a game would result in disqualification, which led to this series being named Oscar Night, as players acted as though they were trying to win. Following an endless amount of solo kills and the match being prolonged, officials stepped in to pause the game, which interestingly ended just over a minute later.
My goodness, it was beautiful to see an IG. They're going to lock down the 2-0 after this very interesting second match.
Welcome back, everyone. Huge fan of Oscar Night, eh, Eric? That's quite the game that they have.
That is so hilarious that both teams just don't want to win that. It's got to be a flaw in the system when winning is bad for your playoff seeding.
It's definitely not ideal. But speaking of winning, which is the worst segue and most generic segue I've ever made in my life.
The worst.
Yeah, thank you. Dignitas, all of a sudden, after losing 4 straight sets, they come out.
Was that 4? It looked like you showed 5 there.
Yeah, well, the thumb doesn't count as the fingers. So
oh, of course, right.
So Dignitas comes back 2-0 week against CLG and P1, which you would definitely not expect.
The long con.
It was pretty long.
Yep.
The con was very long. But a lot of the reason for that, to me, is Adrian already coming in as a support his first weekend, and he was looking great on Thresh and Blitzcrank in every game he played.
Yeah, and he had an interesting quote saying in his other teams, everyone else was tryharding and he was trying to catch up or something to that extent.
It didn't sound good.
And now he's the one. Yeah, he basically, it sounded like he wasn't trying his hardest on other teams, and now he's tryharding and he looks great. He led them to a 2-0 week. And yeah, people were not expecting that after they looked pretty rough the last couple of weeks. But especially 2-0ing like some of these games. It's surprising. They're even winning games at Baron, which is against the whole mantra. I realize it's on basically a different franchise now. It's been bobbled around so much, but
you can't escape the Dignitas Baron throw curse. It's just always there.
I think they're slowly escaping it. I say that, and now next week they'll go 0-4 all on Baron throws. But I think overall, just this middle pack and the NALCS might actually be okay. Like the teams, outside of these top 3-4 teams, I think 5 to 7, they're actually decent teams. Dignitas, Envy. I think it might be the most competitive NALCS we've seen in a while. Yeah,
I would say that too. I mean, you don't usually see teams in the past in that ranking be able to compete at all with the top of the standings. It would always just be, oh, TSM won again, Cloud9 won again. You watch these games with Envy in them, this is going to go poorly, and it's going to be a waste of my time.
You expect, even when Dignitas had that great start to the split, people were like, yeah, that's not going to last. So then they lost 4 in a row, and I was like, there you go. But maybe they're back. Maybe they're going to lose a bunch more. But overall, yeah, that middle pack is actually impressive. Even when they're getting behind in games against some of these better teams, they find a way to come back and win them. Yeah, for Dignitas too. It's not just Adrian. That bot lane now with Altec, which I don't know why he was ever a free agent or why he was ever let go of FlyQuest. It's still beyond me. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why he's been hopping around teams. He's still more than serviceable. Probably top 5. Yeah, I've always in the league thought that he was a great AD carry, and now you put him with Adrian down there in a meta where AD carries are kind of prioritized. You see Kalista being first picked in games, and he looks great on them. He had great games against CLG on Kalista, and all of a sudden Dignitas looks like a top 6 team. Look like a playoff team. They do look like a playoff team. I mean, again, this is week to week, and anything can happen. And CLG had an interesting performance, which we'll touch on in a bit. But still, Dignitas, I would say, looking pretty solid. Good bounce back week for them. Yeah, absolutely. So, Phoenix lost to Dignitas, and it pains me to say that they lost 0-2 because I've been, really cheering for them and Mike Young. Yeah, that one hurt. But now they might be Phoenix done because they're at 3-9. Yes, that was rough. They're at 3-9, and there's only 6 games left in the season.
and they're 3 games back of Cloud9 for that 6th place spot. So they're going to have to go on a pretty good tear. And I think this week really might have put a nail in their coffin.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way I see them knocking out Cloud9 to get that final spot, and they're even further behind other teams. So
yeah,
some of these other teams, it's out of their hands basically. Like Envy or Dignitas, a team like that are going to have to collapse these last couple weeks. And I love my boy Mike Young, but that second set of games wasn't terrific.
No.
But jet lag. Coming back from Rift Rivals.
Sure. Blame jet lag,
Yeah. The first series against TSM, you were saying it earlier, it was closer than the 2-0 would say.
Yes.
But it's still a 2-0.
It was a 2-0, but I mean, you look at that series, and a lot of times when you hear 2-0, it's just like, wow, Phoenix 1 got dumpstered. That's not the case. They actually looked pretty decent. They had gold leads at times. A lot of the mistakes were just one fight at Baron or one fight, down at Dragon and just steamrolled from there. I mean, the first game against TSM, it was literally one team fight, and then TSM just ran down the base end of the game.
Yeah.
So it's just that one decision making, which I mean, as a team, they're still pretty new. Mike Young and X-Special haven't been around for that long on this roster, so they're still figuring things out, and they took advantage of looking a lot better at Rift Rivals against these European teams for whatever reason. But all of a sudden they come back. I don't think people were expecting them to beat TSM, but I would still say their performance was good overall until Dignitas kind of stomped them in games 1 and 3.
Yeah, I think they still might be a better team than a couple of the teams currently in the playoffs, but their terrible start, it might be too late for them to make any noise in these playoffs.
And when you look at their schedule coming up, it's Cloud9, Team Liquid, Echo Fox. You can win against Liquid and Fox, but then CLG, TSM, and FlagQuest. So there's tough competition in there.
It's like going 3-3, it sounds like.
Yeah. And I think the big game there is against Cloud9 because that's the team they're going to have to probably kick out to get into the playoffs, realistically.
Yeah, if they do manage to win that series, you got to be a little concerned if you're Cloud9. That's becoming a little bit more of a slump, especially even after Rift Rivals and their whole. There's a lot of issues going on with C9 right now.
There definitely are. But Immortals, not so many issues.
No.
They had that 0-2 week, took a break during Rift Rivals, came back 2-0, and once again, they're looking solid. And I think Xmithy right now is in a perfect situation where the meta is kind of shifting towards a spot where Sejuani is relevant, sure, but it's also more tank-based, more Cinderhawk-based. I know there might be some Duskblade junglers coming out there too, but overall, there's Maokai jungle coming back, Nunu's getting popular again, and you see guys like Rammus, maybe Cho'Gath popping back up. So for him, it's a great spot where he loves to control the game. And on tanks, he just looks a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, because you can kind of run in and just soak up all the damage. And your mistakes kind of get masked. Not that he makes many mistakes. He's a pretty calculated guy. But Immortals overall, just another team that I think people were expecting, okay, when are they going to fall off? And again, they had it's hard to call it a slump for 1 week, but they had that off week, and then they come back and looked pretty commanding, convincing when they played Cloud9. They were in control for both games and just pretty much outplayed Cloud9 across the board. So I think this team is for real, maybe. They could even maybe get one of those buys with what's going on. CLG and C9 both kind of, I don't know what's going on behind that curtain.
There's a lot going on behind the curtain. I'm not sure I want to peek behind it because it could be
definitely should.
Pretty creepy.
Make sure you knock.
Yeah,
make sure you knock on a curtain.
Definitely knock on the, thank you. But yeah, Pobelter, especially this week, he averaged 7 kills a game. And again, he was playing Cork, which really seems to be the
pretty safe champion.
It's not overly difficult to play when you just rain down the phosphorus bomb and then shoot rockets from afar. Unless you go absolutely crazy with the package.
And that is a pretty common theme that you're seeing guys. I don't know if they feel like it's like stronger than a Rumble ult, so you might as well just get it across the team. It does do an insane amount of damage, but Rumble doesn't have to flash into 5 people to do his ultimate. So people gotta. Huhi in particular had a couple Valks in on Corky that were questionable. One of them basically lost them the game, but he's still a good champion.
Yeah, he's still good. Just don't Valkyrie in that.
Maybe not all the time.
No, once in a while it's fun. Let's get to the fun stuff, the stuff that everyone wants to know. And this is CLG doing what they classically do, which is, no matter how that's right, no matter how good of a performance they have the entire split, they're going to disappoint you at some point. And lo and behold, this was the week. This was a disappointing week, everybody. If you're a CLG fan, you take back your flare off Reddit and just kind of hide under the shadows for a bit, because game 1 against FlyQuest, they were losing pretty badly. And then miraculously came back to win, just kind of outscaled from there. Game 2, after a win, oh my God, I don't know who you are exactly.
He's a god.
That's right. It looked like it in that game because they completely stomped FlyQuest, and Omar went like 5-0 and 13. Looked pretty good on Olaf.
Rookie of the split.
So yeah, a little bit of shaky performance. Rookie of the split. Not over Mike Young. That's impossible.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't convincing, but they beat FlyQuest. Cool. And then here we go. Dignitas comes up. Whew. And game 1 they lose. Dardoch. It was a close game back and forth, but eventually they lost that one. And then game 2 after losing, you would think there's a lot on the line here. What do they do?
They sub Dardoch out so that Omar God can play the exact same champion that Dardoch played in the first game.
And this time they got stopped.
Yes. Now, I know Dardoch tweeted earlier that there's no internal issues. He doesn't have an attitude problem. Omar God just earned the spot. But, I mean, if you're fighting for a top seed and you're right there, it seems like an odd time. You're 0-1, down 0-1 in a series to bring in a sub jungler. I feel like there's got to be something going on there.
Like, I understand the argument of, maybe there's a bit of a cushion between us and the other teams, but now there's not, because you just threw away a series. Maybe you wouldn't have lost anyways to Dignitas because they were looking pretty good, but overall, I mean, they're all tied at 9-3 now with TSM and Immortals, who look better than they do.
Yeah, I mean, now they're definitely at risk of not getting that bye, which is basically the main thing you're after. I've said before, 3-6 doesn't really matter that much. It's mainly those top 2 getting you right to the semifinals to get some points towards Worlds. So, yeah, I'm not sure what CLG is doing there. It's too bad because after Rift Rivals, all the hype with NA, and then people were like, and you haven't even seen CLG. They might be the best team in NA. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Maybe they're not.
You just expect them with an extra week to prepare. They'd have something in plan. Did not look like it at all. Joining them in the land of declining NALCS teams is Cloud9 or Cloud6, because they're in 6th place with a 6-6 record. It's pretty spooky.
That's a little spooky.
Yeah, it's terrifying. Not a good sign at all for them.
No, 6
and
6.
I mean, sitting at 6-6, 6-6.
Yes.
Everyone understands, I think.
I think we've got it. The devil.
That's Thank you for really making it clear.
Yeah.
They lost to Immortals and Envious, or Team Envy, and sure, losing to Immortals is fine. Envy you don't expect, but it wasn't just losing. It's the way they lost some of these games, and they don't look good.
Yeah, especially, I forget which game, but one of the games against Envy, they got out to a quick start. They had almost like a 2,000 gold lead really early in the game. They had Sneaky rolling in lane, and then it just kind of fell apart. They really seemed lost in the mid and late game of pretty much all their games this week, which is kind of where we've seen them excel. You know how you smell.
Yeah, I got
you. Really seen them excel with Smoothie just really directing where the team goes and everything. But the bot lane in particular struggled this week, and they still have that issue in the top lane. Impact and Ray, who do they go with? Who's actually playing well? Or both of them not playing well? I don't know. There's a lot going on. But Jensen's great.
Jensen was still solid, you're right. But Sneaky was definitely a weak point this week. He didn't look comfortable whatsoever.
Nope.
And yeah, you mentioned the mid-game team fights. They were winning a game pretty comfortably against Immortals in game 3. And then they had that dragon fight over the Infernal and gave away 4 kills. And that's basically when the game turned and it just went out of control from there. So it's just one decision.
Yeah, and the fights they're picking are ones that are not to the strength of whatever their comp is, whatever point in the game it is. They're just kind of, they seem to just be like, all right, let's fight here.
Yeah, no power spikes taking into.
No, let's go.
Yeah, they're just gonna fight. I'm definitely concerned for them. I'm not sure what they're gonna do to turn it around, but right now they're that team on the bubble. They're in 6th. They have a couple of games up on Echo Fox for the 4th or for the final playoff spot, but the way they're playing right now doesn't look good.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if it's a huge concern that they'll actually miss the playoffs. I still think they'll make the playoffs, but I don't know how much noise they'll make in the playoffs at this current form. And yeah, they have a lot of points from getting second last split, but in terms of Worlds, I mean, if they don't win a round in the playoffs, then they're definitely in jeopardy of missing out.
So we're going to get to your questions very shortly, so make sure you send them in and we'll get to them. Before we do that, quickly we're going to touch on the new patch, came out, patch 7.14. And there's a lot going on in this patch.
Yeah.
Particularly, it might be the League of Duskblade again.
Oh, God.
Where the lethality changes are that it now scales with your own level. So all these solo laners that build Duskblade are just going to be able to absolutely destroy you in the bottom lane. So if you're an AD carry support, there's going to be a lot of damage coming your way.
The good old days of Zed roaming, and
I don't like those days.
like especially right when they changed QSS, so you couldn't get rid of his ult. It was just like he ults you, and you just I'm
dead.
So that might come back for
yeah.
AD carries, guys like Talon jumping in and just completely one-shotting you. I don't know what's worse, having assassins jump in on your face and one-shot you instantly, even if you pop everything, or playing against these mindless tanks like a Nunu or a Maokai where you have 4 items and don't do any damage.
Yeah, well, there might be both.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's very exciting. You know, you got Maokai coming back into the meta and all these other guys. So there's tank junglers, there's Duskblade top laners and mid laners, and then there's the poor bot lane who don't seem to get much love.
I think it was just becoming like AD carry was becoming pretty like prominent and like, yeah, you can focus around them now. But now maybe it'll go back to Ashe and Varus and you're a CC bot.
That's right.
But Sivir might be back. Press that alt.
Very interactive champion.
Yeah.
You press R, you press W, and then you go to town.
And then you spell shield 1 move, but it doesn't matter because 2 moves one-shot you. So
very good.
Fun times.
Absolutely. All right. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready for some fire questions.
All right. Yeah, we're about to take your questions, so keep sending them in, and we'll get to as many as we possibly can before we need to get out of here. I don't know when that is, but we're going to answer questions.
We're going to answer some questions. That's a fact.
That is a fact. First question, Ray or Impact for Cloud9? And that's tough because right now they've both looked so shaky, and again, they have personal stuff going on, whether it's health or just their own personal mental state.
Yeah.
There's just a lot happening there, not just in the top lane, but as a team overall. There's so many struggles. So I'm not even sure if it's one guy over the other, whereas it's more just ironing out the team.
Yeah, I feel like, it's not even that simple because at one point it was working so well having them both. But I feel like you've got to maybe just stick with one now just because it's not working. Other things aren't working with the team. Just get something familiar and comfortable the whole time. I might go with Ray just because I feel like he has a higher ceiling that he could go to right now. I feel like Impact, last split he was amazing, but he's definitely tailed off quite a bit this split. It's just a matter of if he's comfortable playing every game, if Impact's comfortable having him play every game. There's a lot of stuff going on there.
Fair enough. It's definitely interesting because right now I think the meta is going in a place where it favors Ray more on these top laners.
Yeah.
Like the Jarvan, and you're probably going to see some new guys come out up there too. I know Fiora's going to take a back seat after she got some nerfs, but the meta's probably going in a position where it favors those carry top laners. So I would probably see Ray more often than Impact. But it's just funny because it was always Impact game 1 and then Ray the rest of the way, and they would flip-flop, and it was working perfectly, and all of a sudden it's broken again.
Yeah, and now, neither of them look particularly good. Maybe they need a third Mike Young type character. Pop in.
Yeah, there you go.
Check out the scouting grounds.
Yeah, exactly. So an interesting question here is NiP the worst team in the LCS? And then there was a comment saying that Liquid is pretty close. And I would agree that Liquid's pretty close, but I gotta say that NiP is probably one of the worst teams that ever played in the LCS.
Probably beyond the LCS.
Yeah, maybe. Look, they kind of purchased their spot and then put this misfit roster together that hasn't played together. They brought over.
They're not misfits, man.
Did I say misfits? I meant NiP.
He said misfit. It was a joke.
Oh,
they got it.
They
got it.
Thank you.
They're
You're
pretty
very confusing. Yes.
Now you don't know what you're talking about.
No, you threw me off completely.
NiP is pretty bad, but I feel like even Origin recently was probably worse. But I don't even think he said the history of LCS. I think Team Liquid would beat them.
You mentioned it to me earlier. You want to see Rift Rivals with the bottom teams going up against each other.
Next time they do Rift Rivals, they should send the bottom 3 teams from each region, and that would just be a whole clown fiesta. Maybe make them ARAM. Play on the ARAM map. Yeah. That's what I'd be interested in.
So NiP, Monkeys, Rocket going up against Liquid, FlyQuest, and who else would you throw in there? I wouldn't throw Phoenix 1. Phoenix 1 would have won that tournament.
Phoenix 1 goes as the worst and the best.
That's right.
That's only fitting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very good. I would definitely watch that, though. It'd be very entertaining
Yes.
in probably the worst way possible. Dylan Costello says, what do you think of Envy making it to the playoffs and possibly semis? You think they can get out of a first-round matchup, maybe?
Semis.
Who would they go up against? Right now, they would be up against, looks like...
If they're playing Dig or someone,
It'd be Dig right now.
I could see them easily. Not easily. I could definitely see them beating Dig. And I think they're actually pretty good. Lyra is probably still the best jungler in NA.
He looked great this week.
That bot lane is pretty good. I don't even know what to
I think
I'm
the
scared
facial
to say it.
expression,
I'm scared to say that they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I think they're actually near the top. Maybe Freak was a genius all along. Not really. Sorry, Freak. But and Seraph sometimes. The mid lane, Niski looks better.
Wow, look at that.
So I could see them getting to semis.
But
I don't think they have a chance in semis, but
No, I don't think so either. But for a team that was bottom of the barrel last split, this turnaround is exceptional. With Lyra kind of taking the lead, and then just the laners overall have been better. Niski, I agree, looks better. He can just do more than Pyrian can. And then the bot lane must be one of the bigger turnarounds I've seen in the LCS. I mean, these guys look pretty good. Hakuho's a playmaker, roaming across the map, warding up.
And Apollo's been around for quite a while now on a whole bunch of
bad
teams. Yeah, and been like the looked at worst player on kind of good teams, mainly just Impulse. But
that's right.
Finally getting some credit and much deserved. But if they keep winning like this, I think Lyra might get some MVP votes and should.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. So Sabo says, at the moment, who's the better team, CLG or TSM? And I think if you look at it, it's pretty clearly TSM, but CLG has potential to do better than...
Oh,
I said the word potential. That's right. It was not even on purpose.
We got to bleep that out. You got to bleep that out.
But seriously, this roster, and you've seen it this split, that they've looked absolutely incredible. And then it's really just this week that they took this step back because they're experimenting at a strange time.
Yeah, this was a kind of weird week, and especially coming out after the break, I don't think you can argue that CLG right now is better than TSM. After TSM won Rift Rivals, they come back. They weren't amazing, blow you out of the water this week, but they were pretty consistent. They're definitely the best team in NA.
I'm with you on that, yeah. TSM, pretty undoubtedly the best. Bjergsen, he looks incredible, and I think you have to ban Syndra against him. You should ban Syndra against most teams, don't get me wrong, because it's...
Yeah, you should really just save 30 seconds of the pick ban and just have Syndra banned on whatever side.
But there's 10 bans. You would think that Syndra would be one of them, most of these games.
It should be all the time.
Bjergsen
looks amazing on it, and I feel like even mediocre mid laners, when they get Syndra, they look like they're a lesser form of Bjergsen.
You look very skilled when you press that R button.
Ooh, and you one-shot the AD through heal. Oh, that's fun gameplay.
It's very fun. Let's hit the LCK for a second here, because a viewer wants to know if we think SKT will bounce back from their current losing streak.
Well, what's bouncing back? Like winning
a
LCK? I think they'll win a game, but...
They've gone 0-2 against 3 straight opponents.
Yeah, it's very surprising they're getting swept in these games.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you've got to believe. I don't know what bouncing back is. I mean, the top 4 or 5 teams in general in Korea look pretty good.
They do look good.
So it's going to be tough for SKT, but I think they're the team that they always look like they're dead, and then come playoffs or whatever, they steamroll everyone.
I think they'll be okay, but there's definitely some issues in the jungle with whoever it is, if it's Peanut or Blank. In the Jin Air series, they got outclassed by Umti. That was unbelievable.
I feel like their jungle is so feast or famine. Whoever's playing there, it's either like Blank, he goes on a 20-game win streak, and you're like, oh my god, he's the greatest guy ever. Or it's like, wow, SKT doesn't have a jungler, even though they have 2. They both suck. They're either completely dominating or basically irrelevant. So, I think they'll be okay.
Remember when Peanut was considered the best player in the world?
Now then he got benched.
So not so much. So going back to Worlds, do you think Fnatic is good enough to play at Worlds, and are they ever going to be as good as they used to be? And I guess
referencing
like a couple weeks ago, or back in this, probably the Huni stage is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, when they made semis.
That team was pretty incredible, because that team near Origin was also a top-notch team.
Yeah, that was probably the best Western team ever.
So I don't think Fnatic can reach that. I mean, right now there was so much hype going in the Rift Rivals, but if you struggle at, on an international stage against only North America,
yeah, I mean,
there's going to be a problem against the Korean teams.
Basically, everyone but Reckless and Soaz have pretty limited international experience on that roster. Jesus has a bit, but like Caps and Broxa have none against.
Except for Rift Rivals, yeah.
And I guess that's experience. But playing against top teams from Korea and stuff, I think this Fnatic iteration of Fnatic is definitely good enough to play at Worlds, maybe get out of groups, but I don't think they'll put up a performance like the Fnatic of old.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, they'll probably make it to Worlds. I don't doubt that too much. But as far as having an impact and being a relevant team, I don't see it. I know some of the Europeans were kind of sweeping aside their performance at NA, being like, we only had a week to prepare, whereas for the Worlds, you have like 2 weeks to kind of delve into the meta and get ready for it.
Yeah.
I'm still not sure that's a great excuse, but again, Fnatic really doesn't care about the meta. They just play their own style.
Yeah, and I feel like more so people will just take Worlds a lot more seriously. At Rift Rivals, there was just memes on the line. And there are a lot of memes on the line at Worlds, but there's also some much bigger prizes.
There definitely are bigger prizes. Will C9 be will C9, that's right, ever be able to make it to Worlds after their slump? And I think the answer is yes, because of their performance last split.
Yeah,
in terms of points, they're looking pretty solid still.
Yeah, I think they just, of course, there's a bunch of different variables, but I think if they just make semis, probably
they're probably okay.
Good, if they like get third place, win that third place match.
Unless TSM doesn't win.
Yes, then they're screwed.
That's
they can always do the gauntlet, the old reverse sweep, even though they don't have high.
C9 does love the gauntlet. Well, he could come back.
Where's he sub in? Top?
It doesn't matter.
Bring him in
as
top.
Long as he's on
Shyvana
the roster,
top. Teleport Smite. Bringing it back.
But even without high, they've been able to pull off some reverse sweeps.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, they do love the gauntlet for whatever reason. But I think if you have TSM winning the split, which I'm pretty sure most people do, then C9 is going to look pretty decent at going to Worlds. As far as performing, that's a different question.
If you're limping into Worlds like that, you're not going to do too great, especially with NA's poor seeding that they're going to have at this Worlds. So
yeah, it's a pretty Worlds question day, which is fine.
Everyone's looking forward to it.
I'm very excited. I think the performance at Rift Rivals kind of hyped up a lot of people with North America, which would probably be taken back a little bit.
Now the hopes will be crushed when no one makes it out of groups.
But I mean, Korea's not even the best region. They lost to the LPL, so
that's true. LPL's the best.
That's right.
Always has been.
World Elite, bring me the skins. It's gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. Don't quote me on that.
No,
Anybody?
I already wrote it down.
I didn't see it. Do you think that TSM is going to be better in Worlds than past years? That's interesting.
Well, last year they didn't get out of groups. The year before they made quarters, right? I mean, basically the dream. I feel like the best performance they could hope for is getting semis, right?
Yes.
You think they could? I don't think they could get out of semis in any way.
It would have to be a weird looking bracket.
Yeah, that's basically their finals would be getting to semis. They might have a chance this year, but I mean, all the Korean teams look pretty good. Like even the third seed that's coming in this
right now,
year.
SKT is the 4th best in Korea.
Yeah,
so
that's
there's
terrifying.
competition.
Yeah, and there's a good chance they're gonna have one of them even in their group. So, I mean, maybe I think they could get out of groups in that second place, and a lot of it is luck of the draw, who you get in that quarterfinal matchup.
It's a big deal.
Like if you get a Korean team in that matchup, then you're pretty scooped. Scooped?
Okay.
But I think they can get out of groups. They should get out of groups, which is technically better than last year. So
it is better than last year. They definitely should get out of groups and probably run into a Longzhu, a Samsung, a KT, and then probably lose. So again, you have to get lucky in the group draw.
Yeah, and get like a Flash Wolves or something.
Yes, which again, Flash Wolves can be. That's not a bad team, but that's the kind of team TSM's gonna have to beat to get into the semis.
Yeah, and that's a team they have a much better chance at beating than a Korean team.
Yes.
Although taking a Korean team to 5 games, that'd be cool.
It would be cool. I doubt it would happen, but it would be cool. Again, this TSM team is probably, it might be the best team they've ever had. With Doublelift, with Bjergsen, Sven's looking a lot better lately, and then Hanser and Bauerfrost rounded out nicely. They look good across the board, and they're not getting a ton of competition in North America.
No, I mean, they kind of had They've looked a little slow at times, but I think it's just as they've said, they're just trying different stuff to try and be the best internationally. They don't care as much about NA because I'm sure they feel like come playoffs they can just turn it on and beat most people, and they've proven they can over the years.
I'm with you. Wesley Brown says, do you think C9 is in trouble because of the top lane, and should C9 move Sneaky back to Ashe and Jhin because he feels like he's better on CC champs rather than carry champs?
That's an interesting one. I think top lane is part of their struggles. It's definitely not the only thing.
It's
as
not
we've
all
mentioned.
of it. No.
It's been that bot lane as well. I mean, I think Sneaky's more than capable of playing both. If they have a comp that's built around him as a kind of carry, then I think he's fine on that. But, I mean, Jhin is his pocket pick.
Yeah, he was the first one to bring it out.
That's true. I mean, yeah, I think he is maybe better on something like a Jhin, but, I mean, he's put up some great performances on Tristana, too, in that TSM series, so.
I think Jin's going to start seeing some more action anyways because of the Duskblade changes and the lethality changes. Because the old build on him was you'd go U-moves into Duskblade into all this armor pen.
Yeah, and then just one-shot someone with your crit.
Right, which was pretty obnoxious. So I do think he's going to be back in the meta anyways. So it might work out. Maybe it helps him out a little bit. But the problems definitely go beyond just the top lane. They got to figure out the mid-game team fights because they're right now a disaster.
Basically, all that's working for them right now is individually Jensen.
Right. Sneaky in lane LoL.
LoL.
Very good. I'm glad we got that ironed out. So Kakashi wants to know 3 teams from NA going to Worlds. Who do you got?
Well, TSM's the obvious one, I would say. It's a pretty hot take. I think TSM will make it. I think C9 will, just because they'd really have to screw the pooch not to.
And TSM also has to screw the pooch.
Yeah. So if TSM loses in the finals, and then C9, I guess it doesn't really matter at that point. I don't know if they can go through the gauntlet.
So I think the question here is, I think we both have TSM winning and then C9 getting through on points.
Yeah.
So who's going to win the gauntlet? What team's capable of going on the run like that and winning the gauntlet?
I mean, it's probably easiest to say CLG just because all the potential. And I mean, basically every year you seem to be like, well, probably C9, TSM, CLG. That's kind of the safe bet. I don't know if I'm feeling bold enough to say like Immortals will go to Worlds or something. And I feel like C9, CLG, TSM have the best chance of doing well for North America over there.
At the peak,
it's a boring pick.
It is boring, but at the peak, those are the 3 best teams in my opinion in the region.
Yeah.
But CLG is rarely at their peak. They just seem to perform down to their opponent a lot. But sometimes they perform up to their opponent, which would be interesting against the Korean teams.
Yeah.
If they can get there.
Although, it would be nice to see P1 in that gauntlet.
That would be very cool, because they could definitely make some noise.
Mike Young at Worlds, that's a dream I've had since, when did he come in, like a month ago? Month and a half ago?
Yeah.
That's a long dream.
That's right. I
can see it happening.
Wow, you dream big there, Paul. Serious question from Philip Paul.
Oh, it's serious.
That's right.
Okay.
Is EU trash? He wants to know if EU is a bad region.
Now, does Philip prefer Philip, Pip, Pop?
Probably not
Cap?
Pip or the latter ones, but he can let us know and we'll refer to him from from now on.
Okay. I don't think EU is trash. Or do I?
So I asked.
No, they're not trash.
Very good.
I think their bottom 4 teams are trash. 3 or 4. The bottom half, I think, is so much worse than NA's bottom half. But I think the top 4 in EU is comparable to the top guys in NA. Apart from TSM, I think TSM's better than all of them. But I think, 2 to 4 and 1 to 4 of EU are comparable.
Yeah, they've definitely got good teams there. It's just, again, right now they're so focused on performing within their region and they have this meta that works in Europe, but then you leave the region and it just doesn't translate the same way because, again, the meta is so much different in Europe than it is anywhere else. They kind of seem like they're in the past and just play their own stuff. But apparently it's not as good when you play it against North America.
If North America can take advantage of it, I feel like these other Chinese and Korean teams will completely demolish you. So
he says, I prefer your Lord and Master, but Phil works as well. So we'll probably go with Phil.
Yeah, we'll see.
Unless you're feeling very generous.
Your Lord and Master. That's a mouthful to say all the time.
It is. It would be tough.
Come up with an acronym.
Yeah, we'll figure something out. He also wants to know if you think SKT took Peanut after they saw what a monster he was when he played against them at Worlds with Rocks. Obviously didn't want him used against them again.
I'm sure that was part of it. And I think also Peanut did the old Kevin Durant, if you can't beat him, join him tactic.
That's
where
right.
This is a massive team they can't seem to beat, so I'll hop over there and then we'll dumpster everyone and I'll be on the winning side. I think both sides kind of wanted it to happen. And at the start, it looked amazing. Now,
That's
there's
right.
a bit of a taste in your mouth. But
Again,
who knows? They could get into Worlds even as a 3 seed. Peanut could go on an unstoppable roll, get tournament MVP.
Another problem is you want to see Peanut on some of these carry champs, not on Gragas.
Yeah.
Gragas is not a Peanut champion.
No, he's a beer champion.
That's right.
Barrel champion.
That's
I mean,
correct.
it used to be pretty. I used to get pretty hyped up with like Gragas combos, seeing them E-flash and do stuff. But now you see it every game, and it's like, come on.
Yeah,
Something
give me
else. You mean more Nidalee?
It's not even AP Gragas.
No,
Cinderhulk.
boring.
It's very boring. Let's see. I guess we should wrap it up shortly, but we'll hit a couple more questions.
Hit me.
He wants to know why we think CLG has recently been playing towards their opponent's skill level rather than their own.
I feel like that's an issue they've had for not just this split. It's going back years.
Which is concerning.
Yeah, they kind of like to play reactive sometimes. So if depending on what plays your opponent's making, you kind of mimic them or play around that. And if they make a stupid play in response, you make a stupider play. I don't know. It just, they kind of play that reactionary style sometimes.
I don't want to go into what they're doing behind the scenes because I honestly have no idea what their coaching is like. But for me, it's a preparation thing where you're going to prepare more for the better team and put in more thought process, look more into champ select, understand what they're going to do level 1, mid game, late game, and that just comes with preparation. So I think a lot of it is the coaching staff maybe looking more towards a game against TSM than a game against Team Dignitas or a game against FlyQuest.
Yeah, I mean, you saw against, I think it was C9 they played where they had those great strategies where Dardoch's coming ganking bottom lane when they're level 1 and he's level 3. So that's obviously, some preparation they put into that. You didn't see any of that this week.
No, you did not. You definitely did not, which is unfortunate. We'll end on this because it's very nice. Very nice question, yes. Noir Barmata. Sorry if I butchered that.
You
makes
definitely
it less nice.
butchered that.
Final question. What can I do to help you guys get subs? Because this channel is one of my favorite channels. Thank you guys for the awesome vids. Just keep sharing stuff out if you like it, guys. Keep with the views. We appreciate you guys coming in here and watching us. So share it out, like the channel, sub to the YouTube.
Bring more comments. The YouTube.
Yeah, comments, the questions.
TheYouTube.com.
Yeah.
The YouTube.
We love taking your questions, so keep them coming. We're done for today, so don't keep them coming now. Maybe we'll hit them up in the comments after. But otherwise, tune in next week again when Eric and I come back to talk about the aftermath of Week 7.
Yeah, write down your questions in a notebook. People still have those. And then save it for next week. That's right.
We got 2.
That's right.
So everyone has one if we do both.
Yes.
Very good. So you have anything else to say before we get ready?
No, just appreciate all the questions and anyone who's tuning in and sitting through us gabbling about things.
That's definitely not a word.
I think it's a word. Gabbling.
It is not?
We'll get back to you next week on whether or not gabbling's a word.
We'll be gabbling next week as well, I guess. So thanks for tuning in to 5v5 Live, guys. I'm Matt Hempstead. That's Eric Kummel. And we'll see you next week.